Without a doubt, 2020 has been a rather odd year, and he's hoping that 2021 can hopefully be better. For me, however, there's been 3 series that have saved 2020 for me. Stuff that definitely stands out above the rest, in terms of its quality, in terms of its story, or even just something that I personally value. Funny enough, as much as it says 3 manga, 2 of them are actually webtoons or manhwas. So I'm definitely curious and interested to see 3 series that you would crown as something that has saved your 2020. The best of the best for you. Because my opinion, my perspective, is going to be entirely different to yours. And I'm definitely excited to see what you have been favoring throughout the year, keeping you going. Before I start, I do have some honorable mentions. First and foremost is Demon Slayer, which is literally carrying Japan's financial structure throughout 2020, which is incredible to see. I actually haven't read or watched all too much of Demon Slayer, but I have enjoyed more so the very small amount that I have watched, and it's always great to see something do so incredibly well. Japan seem to absolutely love this series, and just how much money it's made and how successful it is a showcase for that. Secondly, one of my personal favorites, Jujutsu Kaisen. The Shibuya arc has been absolutely incredible, and 2020 has been such a strong year for the series, not only with its massive jump in popularity, but its escalation and showcase of such incredible things within the manga, and obviously the release of the anime. And last but not least, I have to mention Attack on Titan. This story is so close to coming to a conclusion. Some of the more recent chapters have been absolutely incredible and so very memorable and powerful. It only feels right to mention it, especially because I absolutely love reading it and making content on it throughout the months. So those right there are my honorable mentions. Some quality, some powerful messages, some of the strongest moments happening within these series. It's a great thing, and they may not have started within 2020, but they have definitely flourished and hit some very pinnacle points within it, which has kept fans going throughout the year. So my 3 top series that has saved 2020 for me are not necessarily in any order, but the first one I want to talk about is none other than The Horizon. This is a 21 odd chapter manhwa. It is something that I did not necessarily expect. This was at a point sometime within the year where people were telling me to read a bunch more webtoons and really get into series, and I was going through some of the more popular ones, some of the more low-key ones, and just finding what was interesting. And a name that I kept seeing constantly was The Horizon. Now, not a very enticing name, I'll admit. It's not something that screams webtoon or even something that is remotely interesting, but shouldn't necessarily judge it just by its title alone. But in saying that, it took me a bit to actually type it in and look around for it, see what it was about, have a look at the artwork, as that's usually how I approach some series. I'll do a quick Google search and have a look at the artwork, maybe read a little synopsis, trying not to spoil myself too much, but also seeing if the artwork can at least intrigue me to go check it out further. If I didn't do something like that, I probably have a massive checklist of sorts, which probably wouldn't be the best thing. It'd feel more of a chore to get through all of these series and something that I'm genuinely passionate about or interested or excited in. So even though it took me a long time to go through the motions of figuring out what The Horizon was, I'm so glad I went into this story borderline completely blind. I did not know nothing about the plot, about its characters. All I seen was the tiniest bit of promotional artwork for the story. That is it. And it was enough to hook that intrigue because the artwork was very dark and gritty and kind of painter-esque, if that makes sense. I don't even know if that's how you would describe it. It is a webtoon. It's got that webtoon manhwa flair to it, but it seems like something out of a painting. Just the texture and the style that it gives off reminds me of that heavily. I could probably comfortably say that this series is probably easily one of my favorites. Obviously, I don't really want to spoil it, but all I will say is that the narrative revolves around 2 children and the very brutal, realistic, and authentic after effects of warfare. This is the type of after effects that you don't necessarily see all too often. How the everyday life and interaction between people, and more specifically in the Horizon's case, children, go along and live their life after war has somewhat commenced on their land. It is very unfair unforgiving. It's borderline nihilism, but it has this tinge of hopefulness to kind of continue forward. That somewhere along the road, there will be a better future, a better path. And unfortunately, to get to that bright, vibrant future, you have to cross paths with some of the most detrimental places and people to ever exist. And it's not necessarily the people themselves, unfortunately, it's more so what the after effects of war and the destruction and devastation for it has actually turned people into. It's a very scary sight, as it's one that has happened multiple different times and could easily happen within any future wars that come through. Stuff that parallels reality and reflects it in a very harsh and raw type of way. In a sense, it's also very minimalistic. It's not all too much dialogue within it. It's more so very visually impactful. Definitely more of a visual storytelling experience. You're meant to just kind of indulge into everything, and it's very expressionable, and the usage of words is very small. But when it is used, it's usually very powerful, prominent, or something that stands out, something that sticks with you. Without a doubt, in my mind, The Horizon may be a surprise to people, probably one of the biggest series for me this year. It is masterfully crafted, and I don't think it necessarily gets the attention that it deserves because of the topic that it does surround and how it is showcased through the eyes of children, yet it is so incredibly well crafted and so minimalistic in its usage of words, but how it showcases such expressionable emotions, such powerful moments and concepts through its artwork. It's beyond enthralling, and for me deserves the utmost top tier recognition as being something that is extremely powerful. Now, moving on to my second series, we have Bastard. And in a sense, it has a very similar projection with The Horizon. Bastard is something that I found very early into my webtoon manhwa reading experience. I think it might have been my third series that I ever read. And that was after Sweet Home, which is done by the same author. And to be completely honest, Bastard became probably one of the quickest series to be one of my all-time favorites. I put it up there with my hypothetical top 10. I don't really have a list, but for me, it's one of the most enjoyable and greatest stories or narratives that I've got to experience. But I did read the author's original work prior to that, known as Sweet Home, so I already kind of knew what this author was capable of in terms of artwork and telling a compelling narrative and building such enjoyable characters in a world and an atmosphere specifically. The atmosphere that the Sweet Home authors create is incredible. You feel almost guilty to be able to indulge in such a thick and prominent atmosphere that has so much attention to detail, that reflects all of these characters and their emotions and how well they fit within it. So I felt right at home going into Bastard. To put simply, Bastard follows the story of a father and a son who has this very odd and complex relationship. The father is a serial killer, and he manipulates and warps his son physically, mentally, and emotionally to help him with these killings and serial abductions and everything in between. His father is a disturbing person, let's put it as that, and the son is his accomplice. As you can imagine, this story is very twisted, but the characters feel extremely authentic, and how they're played upon, the growth, the emotion that they express is insanely enthralling. I absolutely love the complexity of the main character and his emotions and how he kind of goes through these hurdles and the experiences of him being raised by his father to where he is as a teenager, to how he wants to go about life and change and be a better person. And it's very dark and depressing, but having these, I guess, pillars of hope kind of prewed through the darkness is allowing him to continue forward. And it slowly becomes a daunting and scary reality where now he may have something he doesn't want to lose. He has people or friends or things that he wants to protect, and he wants to change to become a better person, yet he has so much guilt and nervousness towards what he's done and what he's helped his father with, but it's also all directed towards his father and what he may or may not do, as his father is extremely intelligent and quite viciously unhinged. It's a rather hard-hitting story, and something that I absolutely adored from start to finish. There was not a dull or bad or boring moment in it for me. It's something that I absolutely love, and put it up there with some of my favorite series like Oyasumi Punpun, Trail of Blood, and even Monster. Without a single doubt, I would highly recommend you give Bastard a go. It's very short, it only has about 90 odd chapters, and I think if you're into that stuff, you like the dark, twisted, mental health, psychology aspect of narratives, you will most likely 100% enjoy this. My third and final series, last but not least, is Chainsaw Man. This story has been an absolute gem for me. I read Chainsaw Man when it first came out, and I've been pretty much reading it since, and at the beginning I didn't really think all too much of it. I thought it was pretty wild and out there and felt darker than a lot of the other series within Weekly Shonen Jump. But as the story progressed and the characters came through, and as we came to understand Denji more as a main character, I started to fall in love with the series. And I don't necessarily get that all too often, especially stuff that I'm reading weekly, even more so if I'm making content on it. But I think it was a point where I knew Chainsaw Man just felt different for me. It reminded me heavily of reading Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re week by week. But now Chainsaw Man is in the exact same boat. Both Chainsaw Man and Tokyo Ghoul have this very unique weekly reading experience that is completely unmatched, that you never know what to expect, that the emotion is going to be extremely high, and that the consequences are going to be even higher. Not to mention that Fujimoto, the author, is incredibly unpredictable. He does basically whatever he wants, and it really adds that kind of element of surprise every single week. You may think you know what he's going to do, but he completely twists it and morphs it into a whole new realm and concept, which just fuels back into its story and your reading experience. So when I started to see this rather early on, the story just grew on me further from there. I wanted to know more about it. I wanted to make more content on it. I wanted to do everything related to it. And that usually happens with series that I fall in love with. If I find myself wanting to reread the story and understand characters more and understand this theme or this emotion or this atmosphere or this moment within the series even deeper than what is originally there, that's when I know that I am inherently hooked in. And as much as my honorable mention, Jujutsu Kaisen, has done something extremely similar, I think the response I've had towards Chainsaw Man has been a lot bigger and has easily carried my 2024 Weekly Shonen Jump. It has been such an enjoyable time making content on it. The story itself is absolutely beautiful and captivating and such a thrill to read every single week. And to be honest, I couldn't be more excited for part 2. I basically adore everything about it, and being able to make content on it has been such a joy. So with that being said, that is basically it. 3 of my manga and 3 honorable mentions that have saved and made 2020 a more enjoyable year. Now with that said, I would absolutely love to hear what series or thing has left the biggest impact on you and has made your 2020 a better time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.